राइट। इनफैक्ट आगे बढ़ते हैं और कुछ और बड़ी वॉइसेस आपके लिए सुनाते हैं। एक और सुपर बुलिश वॉइस जो हमारे ईटी नाउ चैनल पे थी, इंग्लिश चैनल जो है हमारा ग्रुप का, और वो है रिधम देसाई मॉर्गन स्टैनली के। कंप्लीटली कन्विंस्ड कि बड़ा बुल मार्केट चल रहा है इस समय, स्ट्रक्चरल बुल मार्केट है, छोटा सा करेक्टिव फेज था। आपको किस तरह से पोजीशन करना चाहिए, उनका थोड़ा सा व्यू सुन लेते हैं।
I think the basis, and we've been discussing this over the past few months, is that we are in a new profit cycle. And I reckon that corporate profit margins will hit a new peak over the course of the next few quarters. If you take a 3 to 4 year view, then we may end up with a compounding of over 20% on earnings. Some of it is priced in, but the market cannot price all of it in because there's always some amount of uncertainty. So as this profit cycle unfolds, I think we will see higher share prices over the course of the next 3 or 4 years. So that's the basis for why there's such a strong bid on share prices. And the profit cycle is coming from very earnest government action. There was a policy inflection that we saw in September 19 when corporate tax rates were cut. Unfortunately, we got impeded by COVID. Otherwise, profits may have already been significantly higher by now. But through the COVID pandemic, the government continued to assert its desire to lift corporate profits with an eye to getting the investment cycle back and taking India's growth to trend line. So successive policy changes have happened over the course of the last 18 to 24 months. All of those point to a higher share of profits in GDP, which, by the way, had dropped to all-time lows by 2019. So we're coming out of those troughs, and I think there should be significantly more earnings growth that we could witness over the course of the next few quarters. There will be a capex cycle. In fact, I think the capital spending that corporate India undertakes over the next 24 months may surprise the market on the upside. We have several new sectors that are in the midst of a capex cycle or at the throes of a capex cycle. So let's start with the internet sector. 12-month trailing funding in the internet sector has now crossed 1% of GDP. A staggering $40 billion has gone into funding internet equity. This is more than 3 times the number in the previous 12 months and 3 times larger than any 12-month period that India has seen over the last 10 years. So what do internet companies do? They don't actually stash the cash away on their balance sheet. They spend it. So we're going to see a lot of internet capex. Now, this was not there in the previous cycle. The second is energy transition. Because of India's commitment to the Paris Accord and structural shifts that are anyway happening, there is an energy transition capex that's taking place. So be it hydrogen, be it solar, be it gas, these are new avenues of spending that didn't exist in the previous cycle, and there will be a fair amount of capex in these areas. Take infrastructure, for example. Now, of course, we had an infrastructure capex cycle last time, but I think this time around it will be a whole lot bigger because it's backed by the National Monetization Plan. So I think that the government is going to undertake a much bigger infrastructure capex than the last cycle. So that's also going to come in. Then, of course, you will see the usual suspects, which is steel, cement, because if you're building more infrastructure, if you're building more energy, a capex, if internet is spending, then you will also need basic materials to come. We're in the midst of a big bull market, and financials have not done well. And I think the reason why the financials have not done well is because we've all gone wrong on the timing of the RBI exit, which is that the RBI has been more dovish than what most people thought. If you go back to the start of 2021, through the course of the year, most people thought that it's the next quarter, the RBI is going to hike. The consensus was of the view October, then December, now February. The fact is that the RBI has held on to its dovish position to facilitate higher growth. And as a consequence, financials have struggled because financials need higher short-term yields to actually make more money. And so relative to other sectors, there is a view that financials are going to lag behind. It is quite likely now, increasingly likely, that the RBI lifts rate, if for nothing, just to keep pace with what the Fed is doing. So you can't lag behind the Fed far too much. So that is the yield flattening that you get, which is very bullish for financials. So if there's one thing you want to do in 2022 is back up the truck and buy the banks. Across the board, I think banks will do very well. I think non-banks could also do quite well. And therefore, the whole financial space may be a big outperformer in 2022.
तो ये मार्केट की बड़ी वॉइसेस में से रिधम देसाई को आप सुन रहे थे और उन्होंने पूरी स्पष्टता के साथ अपनी बात रखी है, जिसके लिए वो जाने भी जाते हैं। एक छोटा सा ब्रेक ले रहे हैं, ब्रेक के बाद तुरंत लौट रहे हैं।